From Accord, this is From Vendorship to Partnership, a show where we dive into the realities of scaling startups. This season, Accord's CEO, Ross Rich, chats with the next generation of startup founders about the ups and downs of signing their first customers while building a repeatable, collaborative sales process.
Hey everyone, welcome to the next episode of Founder's Journey. Really excited for this one. I'm joined by another ex-salesperson and founder and CEO of Sendoso, Kris. We can dive right in. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Ross, for having me on the show. So I'm Kris Rudeegraap. I'm the CEO and founder of Sendoso. I started Sendoso about 5 years ago, and prior to that, spent about 10 years in software sales in San Francisco, mostly as an account executive.
Awesome. Well, yeah, share that similar background and hopefully on a similar path to you, Kris. Maybe just to jump right in, curious to hear the founding story, going from sales and technology for a number of years to building an incredible business. I'd love to hear kind of the path you went down.
Yeah. So while I was in sales at my last company, TalkDesk, I found myself sending out a gazillion emails and wanting to differentiate a little bit in terms of how I set meetings and really built rapport with prospects. And being creative, I found myself sending out handwritten notes. I'd go grab swag from our swag closet. I would find like quirky gifts off of Amazon to send to prospects. And it all worked really well. It was just time consuming, manual. I'd always be tracking, or I'd be checking tracking links, and my expense reports would get declined because they're like, what are you doing buying stuff off of Amazon? But it worked. And so, I thought to myself one day, well, why isn't there a button to make this easier where I could just click a button in Salesforce and send stuff out? And so, I kind of had that epiphany and kind of went for it. I would say my first version was actually called coffeesender.com. So some people know this, some people don't, but it was
I've never heard of this, yeah.
Yeah, it was a very simple Salesforce app and a website where you could just send a Starbucks gift card. And that was the easiest MVP I could bite off on. I think I posted on Upwork. It was like $5,000 to build, and it just took off. And it was kind of a nights and weekends project. It got to I think, like 300,000 or 400,000 in revenue, in a very short period of time. Didn't have great margins. It was about 15% margins, but it was more of a e-commerce business. But it did a couple things. One is it validated the need that salespeople and others were out there wanting to send more than just emails. It also validated that people wanted to click a button inside of their CRM or other tools and send stuff. And then it gave me some confidence that, hey, I can build something that people want to use. And with that, it gave me enough inspiration to then quit my job at TalkDesk and start Sendoso full time. And that was about 2017. Spent about 9 months building out kind of the first version, which for those of the listeners who don't know, it's one part software that allows you to set up teams, allows you to create budgets, set up integrations into your tech stack, designed for sales, marketing, HR teams. One part is a marketplace of all the different gifts and options you want to send out. And then the third part is just the fulfillment and logistics portion of it. And all that equals a sending platform. And we've, since launching, we're now a little over 450 employees, and we've seen millions of sends on our platform, tens of millions in revenue, and super exciting growth in the last couple of years.
That's amazing. I love the validation, just nights and weekends, like you said, just setting up something that validates the idea. I'm sure that was a lot of work on top of your job as a sales executive at TalkDesk. But that's so cool. It's hard to, I think it points exactly what you're saying, creativity of coming up with this idea and doing that in the first place, and then taking a super creative approach to the MVP. Pretty different than some other tech companies that I've heard of. So that's super cool. And then the next question I was going to ask you, which I typically find super interesting, is, what was your approach to winning your first 10 customers? It sounds like you already had potentially hundreds of sends and everything by the time you even quit your job. So curious to hear maybe an edit to that question is what were the first real deals like? So you're fixing this out, smaller things, what were getting those first deals across the line? Did people just get it? Or was there some sort of education involved of like, no, trust me, this crazy thing where you can send random stuff, not just emails to your customers, is going to be, hugely impactful and the thing you should focus on right now?
Yeah, so I'll take you through some of the early days and some of my thinking around it. So one is, we were able to convert some of the Coffee Sender customers into Sendoso customers, but that was also a Coffee Sender was like a free platform. And there was they were almost like warmish leads, but it wasn't like they were customers right away.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. We were able to use that as almost like a warm lead pool to sell into. We also then started selling at a very low price point and a very low, like month to month, super low price point, like to where it didn't economically make sense to run a business at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think me and my co-founder at the time were like, cool, people are buying this. This is great. And then we ended up bringing on kind of a COO/CFO pretty early in our life cycle, when she was maybe employee number 10-ish at the company. And she was like legit, like, 20-year veteran, knew how, to price things, had a finance background. And so when she joined, we like 10x pricing. And that was, I think, then we went back. And at that time we had maybe about 30 or 40 customers. And I would say those 30 or 40 customers, were not real customers. I don't want to say not real, but they were, friends and family customers kind of thing, or founders were selling them. The CAC to LTV wasn't like scalable. So it was kind of just like almost those customers were like our MVP. Would people actually click and send? It wasn't until we actually launched a realistic pricing model, and then ultimately brought on 2 AEs to then come sell that weren't the founders, that I feel like we got our first real customers, because that was, a random person getting a, $10, $20, $30,000 a year subscription to use the platform. And then that became, more of a reality of a business that you could sell. So I think there's some almost false positives for entrepreneurs who think they have product market fit too early because like their ex-boss bought it or their, wife's company bought it. And I think that's, you need to really get strangers to sell your product at a price point that scales. Then you have product market fit.
Yeah, that's a really good point and resonates a ton with what we're going through. We just hired our first 2 reps last quarter, and I'm like not driving every single deal and onboarding and customer success now. Exactly. And it's just different. Yeah, it's you have people buy because they're talking to you, and it's like if it's cheaper and it's like I get the vision, okay, like I want to be on this ride, versus like I'm only buying for the economic value and ROI of this product, and I need to convince other people at my company to stick my neck out for it, is a totally different.
And I kind of sometimes when I talk about those things, I differentiate. I think you can find product market fit in those early like founder sales. But then if you really want go-to-market fit, that's where I really find that you then have a non-founder selling at for the value of your product to net new strangers at a price point that scales indefinitely. And then I think you have, go-to-market fit if those reps can hit quota. And I think that's almost harder to find. I think you find a lot of entrepreneurs that can find product market fit, but can't find go-to-market fit.
Totally. It's funny because I remember now, like the conversations, the first questions the rep asked, which is like a great forcing function, is like, what's the 80% use case? What's the use case? What's, the value of all this stuff? I'm like, I don't know. People seem super excited to chat about this. Like talk about the problem and it resonates with people. And they're like, you're just telling your story and people are excited about like the promise of this thing. It's not like this consistent, this is what people are coming in for and this reason. And like, we need to have that repeatability and all this stuff. I'm like, okay, glad that we brought people in to force that.
Yeah, that's why I urge for some founders like delay hiring salespeople because they're like, I can keep selling this, I can keep selling this. And I'm like, you can, but you're not really proving to yourself that you can build a go-to-market engine and have go-to-market fit. So I usually recommend hiring salespeople earlier than you think you should. And then if you do have a price point of a product that can withstand SDRs too, hire those as early as you can too, because that's another function that is hard to get right, and or the unit economics you need to be able to have them hit quota and that scale too. So as soon as you know that you can do both of those, then I feel like you have a business that at that point you could, maybe go raise a round of funding to put fuel on your fire, but too much before that, and you might be, selling yourself short.
Totally. I don't know if you felt the same way because you're also an ex-salesperson. I felt guilty. I'm like, I should be able to do this. I should be able to get us to $1 to $2 million ARR, and like we should get, be at our A and start scaling before we start adding on reps and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, I totally agree with the lessons that you learned as well.
Yeah. I mean, I always feel like for me, it was like I sold a lot in the first 6 months, which was really product market fit.
Yeah.
Then I stepped away for kind of maybe like a while. And now I'm back to selling a bit more and helping more on the enterprise deals with co-selling and team selling and how I can do that more. Yeah. But, I didn't want to fool myself that, the business was only going to work if I was in the trenches selling. So
totally. Yeah. No, it's funny. It's like so guilty. I'm like, but I'm free right now. I should be on this call.
I know.
Yeah. But okay. One of my favorite questions, since the answers are always so different, is a curveball here. If you could go back to, right when you were doing, the coffee gift card piece and transitioning into this real company, what one piece of advice would you give yourself back at day one?
I would probably give myself the advice of just always be recruiting. And I think that now that we have about 450 people, like we've definitely upped the ante in recruiting a lot more. But I think in, the early days, the more you can build pipeline for yourself in terms of people and talent, like it's going to pay off. And I think the best entrepreneurs scale through bringing on amazing people. And so I think, even though if you don't have a role open, I think you should always be kind of interviewing and networking and finding the next hires that might be months away, but at least you're still selling the dream and painting the picture. And so I'd say that like that's a really good skill that you should be doing like day zero, that many people I think are like, we don't have any budget. We can't hire anybody. We don't know this. But I think it's kind of like you're, preheating the oven, so to speak. You need to start making sure you start outreaching to talent.
Totally. No, that's great advice. And when would you start thinking about, with that advice in mind, hiring a first like dedicated or part-time recruiting partner for someone like yourself?
Yeah. So I think, as soon as you kind of have your first few hires, hopefully you can do through network or through referrals. And I think that's really important. I think it's also helpful where, some entrepreneurs like maybe straight out of college, like I need to start something right now, but there's advantages to working in industry for, years and years. I mean, my first two hires were my first two sales hires were two sales friends from TalkDesk where I worked before. Oh, nice. And so I think building out some of that network can give you a leg up when you need to get those first hires who need to trust you as a person, who need to believe in you, who need to see like, Kris is crazy, but I know he's going to build something amazing. So let's just jump on this rocket ship way early. And so I think you can convince, friends or friends of friends in the early days. But I think as soon as you have a hint of a product market fit and you're going after your go-to-market fit, that's when I think it's worth starting to bring on a recruiter. And I think you can also leverage that person for, people and culture in the early days too, where you probably don't even have an HR person yet. Yeah. But, someone that can, be happy with engaging with your internal employees and doing other fun things to, build a culture. And I think that recruiters
like retention as well. It's kind of like a full people.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's really interesting. Awesome. So I know you hinted at it a bit at the beginning, but would love to hear as we exit out of here, where are you at today and what's the focus? What do you spend most of your time thinking about?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned about, ongoing, we have, about 450 employees, about more than 50 open recs. So we'll be at 500 employees soon, tens of millions in revenue. We're scaling out really nicely. For me, it's a mix of recruiting. So I spend a lot of my time recruiting. I I spend a good amount of my time working with current customers. So more so than prospects now, but I'm speaking with customers. How can I learn from them? How can I share our roadmap and our vision? So I do a lot of customer meetings. And then I'd say there's always a handful of initiatives with different internal teammates that I'm helping. And so that's like dynamic. Each week it changes, which I like. And there's a lot of context switching from one department to the next.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing your founder's journey. If folks wanted to get in touch with you, if other founders and sales leaders want to chat, what's the best way of getting in touch, Kris?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to have a conversation one-on-one. So you can email me, Kris, it's Kris @sendoso.com. Add me on LinkedIn. Always happy to, grab a beer or a coffee or virtually do that. And hit me up.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Kris.
You bet.
You're listening to Accords from Vendorship to Partnership, where we dive into building startups, signing customers, and scaling collaborative, repeatable sales processes. For more episodes like this, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for listening.